Dear students, you are welcome to my online teaching classes. I am Shishpal Chauhan and this is my discussion on Ode on Immortality written by William Wordsworth. And you will listen to my audio only, and some other day I shall come face to face with you discussing this poem in Hindi also. For the time being, please listen to the discussion and you may write some notes of important things from this. It's a long question discussed, and every aspect of the poem has been taken into count. The main theme of the poem is indicated in the very title of the poem, Ode on Intimations of Immortality. William Wordsworth believes that the child is initially aware of his divine origin, but as he grows into manhood, the intimations from his memory gradually fade away. He forgets about his original home with the passage of time. However, everything about his divine origin does not wash out fully from his memory. Some dim flashes about immortality still continue in his mind. The ode has been widely praised for its craftsmanship. Emerson, an American poet, gives his full praise to this poem. William Wordsworth himself had a very high opinion about this poem. He placed it at the end of his collective poems as if it were the roof and crown of his works and his final word on the central problems of his creative life. The plan of the ode is simple but majestic. Its thought can easily be divided into three parts. In the first four stanzas, the poet tells us about the spiritual crisis he faces. In stanza 5 to 8, he states the possible cause of that spiritual crisis. In the last three stanzas, he points out the sources of consolation that still remain open to him. The poem opens with the poet's regret on the loss of some heavenly glory which used to envelop all objects of nature. In his childhood, every object of nature seemed to the poet bathed in some celestial light. Now he doesn't know as to where that light has disappeared. Then the poet regrets the loss of something extraordinary about all objects of nature. Whither is fled the visionary gleam? Where is it now, the glory and the dream? In the first part of his poem, Wordsworth tells us that a change has come over his approach to nature and his relations with it, and approach and relation to nature. Now he has reached in his manhood, although all the objects of nature are the same as before, yet they are without the heavenly glory about them. This is the reason why the poet is in sad mood. Everything around him is gay, he alone is sad at heart. The rainbow, the moon, waters on a starry night, the sunshine are all beautiful, but they are not apparelled in celestial light. Thus the poet tells us about the spiritual crisis faced by him in the first four stanzas. Then the poet proceeds to reply to the question with which the stanza 4 ends. Where is it now, the glory and the dream? This is an explanation of the crisis. He takes the help of the doctrine of the pre-existence of the human soul. We are told that a child brings along with him a heavenly glory or heavenly light when he is born into this world. This heavenly glory becomes fainter and fainter as a child grows into the youth and the youth into man. The earth also does its work. It offers earthly pleasures and comforts to man. It tries to lure him away from heaven. The earth is like a nurse to man in his childhood. It offers love and affection of a mother upon the growing child. The child also tries to imitate the actions of his elders while playing with various toys. He arranges his toys in order to imitate happy and sad scenes of life. The growing child imitates all, a wedding, a festival, a mourning or funeral. Then he also learns to speak the style and dialogues of business, love or strife. According to the poet, the child is the best philosopher and a seer blessed. It's because he understands the spiritual truth which grown-up persons fail to understand. The child is also aware of his immortality. The poet feels happy that we, even in manhood, in peaceful mood, we can realize that we come from heaven, which is our real home. The poet also feels that his loss has been great, but that his compensation has even been greater. Though he has lost vision of childhood, he has gained in humanity and maturity. In addition to this, he has developed a sympathy for his fellow men. Now the poet has begun to enjoy nature in a more sober and reflective manner as he advanced in years. He doesn't appreciate nature sensuously. Now he is able to read a moral and spiritual meaning into nature. He has also come to realize that man is mortal. A little further in the same stanza, means in 11th stanza, the poet says that he can perceive something noble or wiser even in the humble and commonplace objects of nature. To me, the meanest flower that blooms can give thought that too often lie too deep for tears. To me, the meanest flower that blooms can give thoughts that do often lie too deep for tears. Thus, the poem contains a metaphysical doctrine. It's the theory that the memories of childhood tell us of a life before birth. It proves that our soul is immortal. The truth of the doctrine cannot be verified by us from our experiences. Thus, the poem lacks universal appeal necessary for the enjoyment by an average reader. To address the child as a mighty prophet, seer blessed, best philosopher, has also been criticized. Coleridge also criticized the poem on this account. The idealization of child on the ground of purity and innocence is defensible, but it's not justified on the ground of its spirituality or prophetic quality. However, the poet has very vividly described the psychology of the child. The child is an imitator, an actor who performs all parts, copies all actions and gesture, he says. The poem is autobiographical in nature. There is melody, emotion, sincerity, and simplicity in the poem despite its metaphysical theme. The poet has also used rhythmic and effective phrases like the glory and the freshness of a dream, the light of common day, thoughts too deep for tears. There are some marked defects in the poem. For example, there is a sudden transition in thought after the first four stanzas of the poem. The reason for this is obvious because the first four stanzas were written in 1803, whereas the last seven in 1806. People are also not ready to agree or believe that a child has a deeper insight into external nature and understands its significance better than a grown-up person. The idea of pre-existence has been given much length for discussion and hence it mars the unity of thought. But despite all the defects in the poem, no one can deny the fact that this ode is Wordsworth's supreme achievement. Emerson called this poem the high water mark of poetry in the 19th century. Thank you very much.